Hey guys, Lewis here, and in this video I want to talk about how to use Anki for Japanese, so for learning Japanese. Now, I've learned Japanese, I'm able to have fluent conversations in Japanese, and this is in large part due to Anki, but I've had to learn through trial and error. I made a lot of mistakes, and I also learned other languages like English, for example. This is my second language. I'm a native French speaker, and I've also talked with a lot of scientists, dozens at this point on my main channel, Lewis Telegram. I did a lot of interviews, dozens of interviews with second SLA researchers, so researchers in the field of second language acquisition. And so I have a lot of information about how to best use spaced repetition systems such as Anki. All right, so the first thing that you're going to want to keep in mind is how are you going to sort of structure the flashcards. All right, so let's say that, for example, you want to learn the most common 10,000 words in Japanese using Anki. Well, that's all great, but how should you structure the flashcards? I'm going to show you what I have determined to be the best setup for the majority of people. So here I have my deck, Anki Core Japanese version 2.1, which is, this is a pre-made deck for Japanese, which has, I don't remember, maybe, 8,000 to 11,000 words. I don't remember exactly, but I've made this myself using my skills as a programmer. I'll put a link to this in the description if you're interested, but this is a setup essentially. So I'm going to study now, and this is how it is presented. Now I've made it pretty, because there are a lot of people that use this deck. So, it's just pretty, but it doesn't need to be, visually stunning or anything. You want to have the English word or expression that you're trying to learn on the front of the card. All right. And not the opposite. You don't want Japanese first. You want to have English first. Now, the reason here is because if you have the English first, then you have to use active recall in your mind to recall, to produce the word in Japanese. And this is so much more powerful than just recognizing it. That is to say, if I'm presented with the Japanese version first, then, in my mind, I just have to think, well, what is this in English? Oh, okay, yeah, I remember this. That's okay. But having to actively recall the word in Japanese it's more conducive to you remembering it better and for longer. And this is according to Professor Paul Nation, who I interviewed. So this is the setup. I'm going to change my keyboard to Japanese to begin with. Pretty easy. Somo somo. All right. So the reason why I type in the answer here, I programmed Anki. I set up Anki to do this, the layout to do this, is because this is not 100% necessary. This is just my own thing, but I found that if I have to type in the answer, then I'm much more involved in the process, right? If I just have to think about the answer, then it's kind of like, I'm trying to do my flashcards really fast. If I have to write them down, it forces me to really think about exactly what is, the characters that are used and so on. So I type in the answer, press enter.
そもそも彼はこのプロジェクトに参加するつもりはなかった。
Okay, so I don't know if you heard this through the microphone because it came out of my speakers, but as soon as I pressed enter, I got the audio for the word. And by the way, I got this right. It's a pretty simple word. And I also got audio for the example sentence here. So this is something I have for each flashcard in my deck. And there are 8,000 to 11,000 flashcards. Flashcards, I don't remember exactly, but this is something that you should do every time that you're trying to learn a word. It's good to have an example sentence. It's not something that you absolutely need to remember, but sort of illustrate how the word is used. Now, here in Anki Core Japanese, I have the sentence, the original sentence, using kanji and kana. I have a second version just using kana, and then I have the Romaji version, always useful. And then I have the translation in English here. I also have, and here this is something that is more useful once you get to a more advanced level in the language. You have a definition in Japanese of the word. So the usage of the word is explained here. So it's a it's a single language like L1 definition. I got this from Dr. Irina L. Gort, who was it was really a wonderful interview I did with her. She works at the same university that Professor Paul Nation used to work at in New Zealand, and she told me, look, if you want to if you want to speak Japanese fluently, there's an element of it needs to come out of your mouth fairly fast, right? You want to be fluent, you want to speak fluently. And so if you learn words just using definitions, yeah, that's fine. But a good way to sort of accelerate that, I forgot what I forgot what the term that she used was, but if you want your brain to think of the word even faster, you can actually use, instead of the definition in English, you can have sort of a definition in the language in Japanese, so that Japanese concepts are linked to Japanese words, and this makes your brain much faster in mastering those Japanese words. There's also a mnemonic. I think I explained this in other videos. I mean, for sure, I talk about this a lot. Again, according to Professor Paul Nation, this type of mnemonic here, I'll let you read it on the screen. But this uses the keyword technique, which has around 70 papers showing its efficacy, and it improves retention by about 20 to 25%. Professor Paul Nation pretty much says that without this type of mnemonics, he would just give up on language learning. Especially as you get older, then it becomes harder to learn languages, but this is an easy way to really boost your learning. Now, so I do think that including a mnemonic in your flashcards is pretty useful. As I said, it's proven scientifically. Of course, thinking of these mnemonics, it's not exactly easy. So, use AI. As a matter of fact, this deck here, the mnemonics are all AI generated, right? So there are little, quirks here and there, and there are some mnemonics that are that are not as great as others, but for the most part, they're really good, and they really help with retention. Now, of course, if you're going to have to create mnemonics for all of your flashcards, and your goal is to learn 10,000 words, that's going to be a lot of work. So that's why I suggest, if you want, you don't have to, but you can take a look at Anki Core Japanese. I'll put the link in the description. And finally, there's also a word part analysis. Now, for this word, it doesn't really apply, but there are some words, in any language really, where you can break down the word in its, different components, and you can say, okay, this component means this, and this means this, and so combined together, this is what it means. And it is also useful to have a deeper level of mental processing, just like the mnemonic, just increase the likelihood of you remembering it in the long term. So this is it. This is how you should structure the flashcard. I'm just gonna press on good, and it's gonna go to the next flashcard. All right. So this is just my deck. This is how I suggest that you structure yours, because I think it's just it's helped me so much. And there are many people who bought my decks for Japanese, Spanish, French, and they really, really love it. So another thing I want to talk about is, if you're going to use Anki to learn Japanese, you also need to think about sort of the order in which the words are going to appear. So if you're going to use Anki to learn Japanese, it makes sense. As a matter of fact, it is crucial that you learn the most frequent words first. So, don't just learn random words that you may think are useful. You'd be surprised at how infrequent some words that you may think are frequent in English, and in Japanese, actually, it's not the same at all. So you need to have some sort of concept of how frequent this word is. In my case, I'm just showing you my case, but you can do your own stuff. If I click on browse here, so we're browsing the Anki Core Japanese, which is my deck. Let me just move this. All right, I'm gonna go at the start of the deck here. Card number 1352. Usually. So you see that's a fairly common word. The next one, interest rate. So this is, it's arguable because here, interest rate can be common in newspapers and stuff, and so Anki Core Japanese was made using text from newspapers. So that is why it's here, but you can ignore it if you don't need this. Anime, it's pretty common. By the way, really common. To fade away, that's pretty common. Apparently in Japanese, crisis and so on. Spring is coming. I mean, you get the point. The most common words need to come first, and as you progress through the deck, there you go. So let's say 7,000. Enjoyment. Um, so you may think that this is actually a common word because it's common in English, but in Japanese, just the word that is used is not as common. So you see, it's kind of tricky to do by hand, by all means. And this frequency list, I built it using so there are sentences from newspapers, news articles that I downloaded from the internet. There are a million sentences in total, and I use my skills as a software developer to parse all of this text and determine which words, which expressions are the most common. And I placed the most common ones at the start. So necessarily, I mean, sometimes there are things that are sort of surprising, like interest rate that we saw earlier, but you can safely just, ignore this if you don't want to. But for the most part, the frequency list is pretty reliable, and it's an excellent way to have, to study and really have a great return on your time, because you don't want to spend time, especially at the start, studying words that aren't really common. So there you go. This is one thing to think about. So that's it. If you have any questions on how to use Anki to learn Japanese, then put a comment in the description, and I'll see you in the comments, and see you next time.